To the ones who can feel the air changing, to the ones who know when silence gets too loud, to the ones who've watched fake smiles hide real fear, this is for you. You ever notice how people get strange when your energy starts shifting? Not when you are down, not when you are confused, not when you are still trying to explain yourself to everybody in the room. No. They get strange when something in you clicks, when your eyes stop asking for permission, when your voice gets calmer, when your presence starts saying more than your mouth ever could. That is when the whispers begin, and that is why every zodiac sign is whispering about you right now. Not because you are loud, not because you are desperate for attention, not because you beg the world to see you. They are whispering because they can feel something coming off you that they cannot label, cannot predict, cannot control. They feel a storm building in somebody who used to apologize for taking up space. They feel pressure in somebody who used to shrink themselves just to keep the peace. They feel danger in somebody who finally stopped explaining why they deserve to exist. That is what scares people, not your pain. People can handle your pain. They can study it. They can gossip about it. They can even enjoy it when it makes you easier to manage. But your transformation, your shift, your refusal to stay broken in a way that benefits them, that makes them nervous. Because the moment you stop bleeding for the entertainment of people who never planned to save you, the whole atmosphere changes. You know what is funny? Most of them were comfortable when they thought your story was already finished. They had you figured out. They had your whole identity trapped in an old version of you. The soft one, the hurt one, the one who kept doubting every instinct, the one who answered right away, the one who tolerated disrespect because you were afraid of losing people who never really valued you in the first place. That version of you made them feel safe. This version makes them check your page twice, makes them reread your silence, makes them wonder who you have become when nobody was looking. Because now you move different. You don't chase the conversation. You don't force the connection. You don't tap dance for approval. You don't beg people to understand the parts of you they were never deep enough to hold anyway. And they can feel it. Aries can feel that fire in you and knows this is not impulse anymore. This is precision. Taurus can feel you getting grounded in a way that cannot be manipulated. Gemini can feel your mind is sharper now, and you are no longer confused by mixed signals. Cancer can feel your emotional depth turning into strength instead of weakness. Leo can feel your presence growing louder without you even speaking. Virgo can feel you getting disciplined, and that terrifies everybody who benefited from your chaos. Libra can feel the balance returning, and now your peace is no longer up for negotiation. Scorpio can feel the death of your old self and the birth of something colder, cleaner, and more dangerous. Sagittarius can feel your hunger for more, that restless pull toward a bigger life. Capricorn can feel your ambition hardening into action. Aquarius can feel your detachment becoming power. Pisces can feel that your intuition is no longer a soft whisper. It is a warning siren now. Every sign can feel it in their own language. That is why they whisper. Because when people cannot control the energy, they start making theories about it. They say, you changed. And they are right. They say you are harder to read. Good. They say your vibe is intense now. Good. They say you have been distant. Maybe. Or maybe you finally realized that being constantly available to people who bring nothing but confusion is not kindness. It is self-abandonment dressed up as loyalty. You spend too much time making yourself easy to digest, too much time trying to look harmless, too much time trying to sound less serious than you were, too much time smiling through disrespect because you didn't want to seem dramatic, too much time carrying your pain in private while people played in your face in public. But pain does something when it sits with the right soul long enough. It stops being pain. It becomes vision. It becomes standards. It becomes boundaries that don't shake just because somebody gets uncomfortable. It becomes that look in your eyes that says, I have already survived things you could not even imagine. So what exactly do you think your opinion is going to do to me now? That is the energy around you. That is what they feel coming. Not revenge in the cheap way, not noise, not pointless flexing, something deeper, consequences, a return, a rise, a shift so real that people who overlooked you are suddenly acting like they always knew you were different. No, they didn't know. They sensed it. They ignored it. Then they got too comfortable. Then you went quiet. Then you went inward. Then life pressed on you so hard that it either had to break you or build something in you that this world was not ready for. And look at you now, still here, still breathing, still carrying scars without letting them turn you into a beggar for sympathy, still walking around with a heart that has been through hell and somehow came back with sharper instincts instead of bitterness. That is not normal. That is not average. That is not something people know how to deal with. Because most people only understand power when it looks obvious. Money, status, followers, a title, a crowd clapping. They think that is what power is. But real power is when your name enters a room before your body does. Real power is when people start second-guessing what they said about you. Real power is when your silence becomes heavier than their opinions. Real power is when you no longer need the audience to know exactly what season you are in, because the results will introduce themselves when the time is right. And that is where you are heading. You are entering that season where everything fake starts falling off. The fake love, the fake support, the fake concern, the fake I'm happy for you energy with jealousy hiding behind the teeth. You can feel it, can't you? The weird replies, the dry energy, the sudden distance from people who used to love having access to you when you were easier to influence, the awkwardness when you speak with certainty now, the tension when you stop laughing at disrespect, the subtle panic when people realize you are no longer available for the same tired games. That is not your imagination. That is the reaction people have when they can feel you stepping out of the script they wrote for you. And let's talk about that script. They wrote one for you a long time ago. Stay nice, stay reachable, stay insecure, stay doubting yourself, stay available, stay soft in ways that make you easy to use, stay grateful for crumbs, stay scared of being misunderstood, stay scared of being alone, stay scared of becoming too much. And you almost lived there. You almost made a home inside your own underestimation. You almost let people convince you that your instincts were overreactions, that your intensity was a flaw, that your need for depth was unrealistic, that your standards were too high, that your vision was too big, that your silence meant weakness, that your kindness meant obligation. But somewhere in the middle of all that disappointment, betrayal, and late-night overthinking, something started changing. You got tired in a different way. Not sleepy tired, soul tired. The kind of tired that makes you sit there and realize you cannot keep betraying yourself just to keep other people comfortable. The kind of tired that makes you see the pattern. You give, they take, you explain, they misunderstand on purpose, you forgive, they repeat, you stay loyal, they stay careless, and one day the switch flips, not with a speech, not with a dramatic exit, not with some big public moment, just a quiet inner decision. Enough. Enough shrinking, enough repeating, enough begging for clarity from people who enjoy confusing you, enough trying to heal in the same rooms that taught you to hate yourself, enough performing peace while your spirit is at war. That quiet enough changes your whole frequency. That is when the zodiac whispers start, because everybody can feel when a person has stopped negotiating with their own worth. That kind of energy is impossible to fake. It shows up in your walk, in your timing, in what you no longer respond to, in what you no longer tolerate, in what you no longer explain. It shows up when you stop reacting instantly, when you stop proving yourself, when you stop defending your boundaries to people committed to misunderstanding them. And suddenly the same people who used to overlook you start watching you like a forecast, because they can feel pressure building. They can feel a win coming, a glow-up coming, a level-up coming, a separation coming, a disappearance from places that never deserved your presence coming. A version of you so self-possessed that people who used to play with your name won't even know how to approach you anymore. You know why this matters? Because people thought your sensitivity was your weakness. They thought the fact that you feel deeply meant you would always be easy to wound. But deep feelers become terrifying when they finally understand themselves. Because now you are not just feeling pain. You are reading rooms, reading motives, reading patterns, reading the tiny changes in tone, timing, behavior, and energy that tell you everything words try to hide. And once someone like you learns to trust that gift, game over. Now you are no longer walking into traps with your eyes closed. Now you are no longer mistaking attention for love. Now you are no longer calling survival a personality. Now you are no longer handing your softness to people whose hands were never clean. You are becoming selective. That word scares people more than anger ever could. Selective with your time. Selective with your energy. Selective with your empathy. Selective with your vulnerability. Selective with your access, because access to you is not supposed to be cheap. Read that again in your spirit. Access to you is not supposed to be cheap. Not after everything life had to drag you through to build this discernment. Not after every lesson that cost you sleep. Not after every betrayal that forced you to grow up faster than you should have had to. Not after every moment you had to stitch yourself back together in silence while pretending you were fine, so the world would stop asking questions it never really cared about. No, you did not survive all that just to keep handing yourself to people who arrive empty and leave full. This next season of your life has to look different. It has to feel different. And the people around you know it before you even announce it. That is why they whisper. That is why they watch. That is why they throw those weird little tests your way to see if the old version of you is still available. A late message, a half apology, a breadcrumb, a random comeback, a fake check-in, a subtle insult disguised as a joke. A little reach for your attention just to see if they still have the same access. And what happens now? Nothing. Because you see it. You see the bait. You see this cycle. You see the setup, and seeing it means you are no longer owned by it. That is power, not just being strong enough to fight, being healed enough to not enter every battle that was designed to distract you from your destiny. That right there will change your whole life. You do not need to clap back at every fool. You do not need to expose every fake person. You do not need to prove every rumor wrong. You do not need to defend your soul to people who would not recognize truth if it stood in front of them with its hand out. Sometimes the most violent thing you can do to a disrespectful pattern is starve it. No reaction, no access, no explanation, no more energy. Let them sit with the silence they helped create. Let them wonder. Because while they are whispering, you should be building your mind, building your routine, building your body, building your discipline, building your income, building your confidence, building a life so aligned that the people who once saw you as an option start realizing they were standing in front of a force and mistook it for fragility. That happens all the time. People mistake gentleness for weakness, stillness for passivity, patience for lack of options, kindness for low standards, until one day they wake up and realize the person they underestimated has become completely unreachable in all the ways that matter. And that is the part they never prepare for. They never prepare for your detachment. They never prepare for your self-respect. They never prepare for the day you stop needing closure from people who brought confusion instead of clarity. You know how dangerous it is when you stop needing what used to control you, when validation stops controlling you, when attention stops controlling you, when fear of abandonment stops controlling you, when guilt stops controlling you, when loneliness stops controlling you. That is when you become unmanageable to the wrong people. And that is exactly why they can feel something coming. They can feel that your habits are changing. Maybe you are waking up earlier. Maybe you are praying harder. Maybe you are moving in silence. Maybe you are reading more. Maybe you are posting less and planning more. Maybe you are finally putting your energy into your own future instead of spending it all managing everybody else's moods. Whatever it is, they feel the shift. Because energy moves before evidence arrives. People can sense when somebody is about to outgrow them. Before the new job, before the new money, before the new level, before the relocation, before the breakthrough, before the room finally says yes to the version of you that had to be built in private. They feel it first. And weak people always get weird when they feel someone near them becoming undeniable. So let them whisper. Let them ask questions they are not entitled to answers for. Let them compare notes. Let them study your signs, your mood, your silence, your glow, your absence, your timing. None of that will stop what is for you. Do you understand? None of it. Not the gossip, not the envy, not the weird energy, not the side eyes, not the fake support, not the people secretly hoping you stay stuck so they can feel bigger in comparison. None of that is stronger than a person who has finally decided to stand with themselves. That is the real turning point. Not when the world chooses you, when you choose you, when you stop abandoning yourself to keep peace with people who were never at war with your flaws. They were at war with your potential, because potential is offensive to people who settled. Your ambition bothers people who quit on themselves. Your healing bothers people who turn their pain into an identity. Your discipline bothers people who romanticize procrastination. Your boundaries bother people whose whole personality depends on access to others. Your comeback bothers people who needed your story to end in failure so they could feel justified in how they treated you. So yes, they are whispering. Let them. You have bigger things to do than manage the emotional weather of people committed to misunderstanding your season. Your job now is to protect the signal. Protect the part of you that knows. The part of you that can feel it too. The part of you that senses this is not the chapter where you break down and disappear. This is the chapter where everything that tried to bury you becomes soil. This is the chapter where rejection teaches direction, where betrayal sharpens discernment, where isolation becomes training, where heartbreak becomes clarity, where disappointment becomes fuel, where silence becomes strategy. This is the chapter where you stop asking, "Why is this happening to me?" and start asking, "What is this building in me?" Because that question changes everything. It turns pain into preparation. It turns delay into discipline. It turns loss into space. It turns endings into room for better alignments to enter. And once you start seeing life like that, fear begins to lose its grip. Because now even your worst seasons become raw material. Now even the nights that almost crushed you become part of your edge. Now even the tears become evidence that you cared enough to hurt and healed enough to keep moving anyway. That is another thing they do not understand about you. You kept going. Not perfectly, not beautifully, not in some polished cinematic way. You kept going ugly, tired, confused, mad, disappointed, with doubts in your chest and pressure in your head and a million reasons to shut down. But you kept going, and people who have never had to rebuild themselves from the inside out will never understand how terrifying that makes you. Because a person who can keep moving while carrying invisible weight, a person who can suffer without turning cruel, a person who can be underestimated and still not lose their vision, a person who can be alone and not betray their purpose just to fit in. That person is a problem for this world, a beautiful problem, a necessary problem, a problem for every fake structure that expected you to remain small. So keep your mouth light and your focus heavy. You do not need to announce your next move. You do not need to explain your new boundaries. You do not need to give people a map to the version of you they did not help build. Move with intention. Move with prayer. Move with strategy. Move with that quiet confidence that comes from finally realizing you are not behind. You are being prepared. And when the whispers get louder, smile inside. Because that usually means the shift is real. That usually means the energy is working. That usually means your detachment is being noticed. That usually means your standards are finally doing what they were supposed to do. Filtering the room. Not everybody can come with you. Some people were only assigned to reveal your wounds. Some were only there to test your discernment. Some were only there to show you what happens when you keep giving chances to people who have not earned access. Some were only there to teach you the cost of ignoring your intuition. Well. They're watching you now the way people watch breaking news. Phones glowing in dark rooms, heads tilted, breath held. You've become the broadcast no one wants to miss. The same faces that once looked through you now, refreshed timelines. hoping to catch a glimpse. Your name trends quietly, not because you asked for it, but because disbelief travels faster than truth. They thought you'd fade into the background like everyone else who dreamed out loud. Instead, you slipped into the spotlight without asking, and now the world is squinting to adjust. Cameras can't capture what you've become. Every lens bends around you, trying to frame what can't be contained. You don't pose, you exist, and that's enough to make the city pause. It started small, one update, one whisper, one piece of proof that you were still rising. Then momentum took over. Someone shared your story, someone else repeated it, and suddenly, entire groups were trading screenshots of your progress like currency. They study your expressions, your posture, your pace. The rhythm of your life has become their metric for self-worth. Every victory you post recalibrates their sense of what's possible and what's painfully out of reach. They don't understand how you did it. They only know that you did. And that unspoken fact keeps them awake, scrolling under blankets, convincing themselves they're just curious when it's really all wearing denial's mask. You've noticed the shift. Strangers greet you differently now. Half admiration, half interrogation. The old friends who used to call at midnight to unload their chaos suddenly text in measured sentences, pretending to be fine. They can't risk sounding small in front of you. You've become the measuring tape no one asked for, but everyone uses. It's not fame in the glittering sense. It's fame as reflection. You embody the version of themselves they abandoned. That's what drives them wild. You didn't escape to show off. You escaped to breathe. But they mistake every breath for a brag. Look at how they orbit. They repost your content with captions that sound supportive, but sting with envy. They slide into conversations that mention you, trying to rewrite history so they appear in your origin story. Some invent private connections. I knew them before the blow-up. Others pretend not to care, yet track your every movement through mutuals. You've become their favorite contradiction, too successful to ignore, too familiar to celebrate. And deep down, they hate that your growth didn't need their permission. You left the chat, and the chat never recovered. Fame, in this age, is measured by obsession density, the number of minds running simulations of your life while neglecting their own. By that metric, you've gone viral in their psychology. They analyze your tone like forensic experts, replay your clips for signs of weakness, hoping you'll stumble so balance feels restored. But you don't. You move differently now, not faster, just steadier. The stillness you carry confuses them. They mistake calm for arrogance because they've never met peace that didn't apologize for existing. There's a reason the air feels charged when you enter a room. Attention is energy, and right now, you're the main conduit. Every glance transfers voltage. You learned long ago not to waste it proving anything. That's why they can't drain you anymore. They come prepared with gossip, projections, bait. But your silence is no longer invitation. It's insulation. They can't touch what they can't reach, and they can't reach what no longer vibrates on complaint. You've leveled out of their frequency, and the only way they can participate now is to watch. Some of them are furious about that. How dare you outgrow the narrative that made them feel superior? They liked you better when you were struggling. It confirmed their worldview. Your wins challenge their philosophy. Every achievement of yours questions the excuses they built their comfort on. They'll tell themselves you changed, that you're different now. The truth is, you finally became visible. They just never imagined you'd shine this bright. The real entertainment isn't your success, it's their reaction to it. You can almost map it. Curiosity, disbelief, resentment, mimicry. Each stage, a confession. They talk about you like you're an algorithm they can hack. They copy your phrases, your schedule, your style, expecting the same results. What they don't realize is that replication without conviction produces noise, not resonance. You moved with purpose when no one was clapping. That's the ingredient they can't steal. Purpose leaves fingerprints they'll never match. Notice how quiet it's gotten between you and certain people. That's not coincidence, it's consequence. Your growth has turned ordinary conversations into accountability mirrors. They avoid you not because you hurt them, but because standing next to you hurts their denial. You represent the proof they can't unsee. The way you carry yourself now, measured, grounded, unbothered, forces them to confront how much of their identity depended on your struggle. You were the control variable in their experiment of superiority. Now the experiment has failed. Even the ones pretending to cheer are cracking under the weight of your progress. They forward your updates to others, voice laced with disbelief. Did you see what they're doing now? The tone isn't joy, it's panic. You became the headline they didn't authorize, and somewhere deep inside, they're terrified that your consistency means their mediocrity wasn't fate, it was choice. That's the cruelest revelation success delivers. Proof that effort works and laziness has a cost. You're not the hero of their story, you're the plot twist. And plot twists ruin lazy writing. They force revision. That's why they call you lucky. It's easier than rewriting themselves. Let them. Luck is the label mediocrity gives to discipline it can't explain. The more they say it, the more obvious their fear becomes. They're not doubting your capability. They're mourning the end of their illusion that you'd always stay beneath them. You didn't just climb, you inverted hierarchy. Some nights you can feel their eyes even when the curtains are closed. That subtle hum of awareness, that collective fixation. You're the silent notification in their minds, the name that interrupts their scrolling. And the irony is delicious. You never asked for this attention. It came as a side effect of authenticity. The more real you became, the louder their fascination grew. People don't actually want perfection. They crave proof that courage works. You provided that proof in real time. Every step you take now broadcasts meaning. Your walks look like statements, your choices like manifestos. You stopped explaining years ago, yet everything you do explains itself. That's what unnerves them, the absence of justification. In a world addicted to disclaimers, you became pure declaration. You notice the pattern everywhere. The same people who once dismissed your ideas now repeat them publicly, as if they were the originators. They quote your sentences in captions, remix your concepts, echo your phrasing. It would almost be flattering if it weren't so revealing. What they're really saying is, we missed it. They saw the blueprint, but not the architect. You were designing in plain sight while they mocked the foundation. Now they're scrambling to build replicas that collapse under the pressure of authenticity. You can't mass-produce originality. It demands solitude, and they were never brave enough to face silence long enough to find their own voice. Every circle you left behind is quietly rearranging itself around the hole you made by leaving. That's the hidden price of underestimating someone who refuses to stay small. You didn't just exit rooms, you changed their geometry. Conversations have new gravitational pulls because your absence exposed who was orbiting who. The people who thrived on your humility have lost their supply. They're realizing that without you to center the drama, their relevance evaporates. They built entire personalities around advising you, correcting you, containing you. Now that you've outgrown containment, their identities have nothing to feed on. Meanwhile, you move differently. You don't announce milestones. You let results surface naturally. That composure terrifies the performative. They depend on spectacle to feel seen, and you made visibility look effortless. Every post, every appearance, every calm decision becomes a case study in control. They dissect it in group chats like scientists of envy, running diagnostics on your peace. How can someone radiate confidence without chaos? How can someone rise without rebellion? They don't understand that your rebellion already happened in silence years ago. What they see now is aftermath, discipline disguised as destiny. Attention has a flavor, and you can taste the difference now. Genuine curiosity feels light, respectful. Obsession feels acidic. You've learned to tell instantly which one you're being served. The genuine ones ask questions. The obsessed ones ask for explanations. They want you to justify your glow, quantify your calm, reduce your evolution into something they can imitate. You answer none of it. You let them drown in the mystery, because mystery is earned, not given. That quiet boundary, that refusal to overshare, is the new currency of power. In an era addicted to exposure, privacy is prestige. You can sense the algorithms trying to keep up with you, too. Your digital footprint carries a pulse they can't predict. Every time they think they've decoded your pattern, you pivot. That unpredictability is your advantage. They're addicted to your next move because you refuse to repeat old ones. What they call unpredictability is just growth moving faster than gossip. By the time they discuss what you did last month, you've already evolved past it. They're analyzing expired data while you're uploading new reality. There's a strange poetry in how the city reacts to you now. Doors that used to creak open reluctantly swing wide before you arrive. People who once ignored your calls now schedule meetings weeks in advance. You're not chasing opportunities. They're organizing themselves around you. That's what happens when credibility replaces visibility. The crowd always worships consistency in hindsight. You built quietly, brick by unseen brick, and now every skyline bears your silhouette. Of course, fame without context breeds folklore. Rumors multiply in proportion to your progress. Someone swears you have secret investors. Another insists you made some impossible deal. Few are willing to accept the boring truth that discipline over time looks supernatural to the undisciplined. Let them fantasize. Every false story is free marketing for the real one. You don't defend your name. You let evidence perform the rebuttal. Nothing silences gossip faster than undeniable success, delivered without commentary. You've noticed how old adversaries resurface disguised as supporters. They send polite messages, sprinkle compliments like bait, hoping nostalgia will reopen access. But you've upgraded your discernment. Politeness no longer equals peace. You read energy before words. You sense intent before interaction. They can't fake alignment anymore. Your intuition scans them like airport security. If the frequency doesn't match, entry denied. No drama, no confrontation, just absence. That's the kind of discipline that drives manipulators insane. They can't start fires if you've removed the oxygen. Behind the scenes, people talk about you like an event. Meetings start with your name. Strategies are rewritten because of your existence. Competitors study your flow, trying to bottle it. They want the formula for whatever you've become. But formulas require replication, and replication dies in authenticity's light. You're not scaling a product, You're embodying a principle. They can't reproduce that because they refuse to become that. The difference between trend and truth is sustainability, and truth doesn't need marketing. Even the air around you feels charged now. When you speak, people listen differently. When you pause, the room adjusts its breathing to yours. That's not charisma, that's coherence. You've aligned so deeply with your purpose that everything around you tunes itself to match. And that alignment makes spectators nervous. They can sense that you're not performing for them anymore. You're communicating with something larger. The applause doesn't move you. It merely confirms resonance. That's the ultimate shift. When validation loses its flavor, mastery begins. But here's the paradox they can't grasp. The more eyes on you, the less you care about being seen. Fame was never the destination. It was the residue of alignment. You didn't chase attention. Attention surrendered. You became the calm in a culture addicted to noise. That serenity is the new scandal. People expect arrogance from those who rise. You gave them humility with boundaries, compassion with distance. They don't know how to categorize that, so they call it mysterious. Let them. Mystery keeps parasites guessing and the wise intrigued. Sooner or later, they'll stop asking how you did it and start wondering why they didn't. That's when you'll understand the quiet revenge of evolution. You never had to punish anyone. You just had to persist. Every day you kept building was a verdict they pronounced on themselves. They tried to write your ending. You turned it into a preface. Now their disbelief funds your momentum. Their attention pays your peace. As the lights get brighter, your focus gets sharper. You've learned to navigate visibility without surrendering authenticity. The crowd may expand, but your circle shrinks intentionally. You're curating energy now, not collecting admirers. Each new level requires stricter access, not larger audiences. That's the secret every celebrity eventually discovers. Fame isn't freedom unless you govern it. And you, somehow, have mastered governance without bitterness. So when they whisper your name tomorrow, let them. When they refresh your page, let them. Their fixation is proof that transformation works. You've become the evidence that discipline outlasts doubt, that endurance eclipses envy. You are their study, their stimulus, their unsolvable equation. Let them analyze while you ascend. You don't need to prove you belong in the spotlight. The spotlight proved it by following you here. And as the city hums beneath your rise, one truth crystallizes. They're not watching you to judge anymore. They're watching to remember how belief looks in motion. Every eye on you is secretly asking for permission to evolve. Give it to them simply by continuing. Don't slow down to explain. Don't dim to reassure. Keep moving exactly as you are, because the spectacle isn't your success. The spectacle is their awakening through your example. The first thing you learn about attention is that it bends reality. When enough people focus on you, their expectations begin to warp the air around your name. Some project worship, some project resentment, but all of it becomes pressure, an invisible climate you have to breathe through. Most crumble under that weight. You decided to refine yourself instead. Every stare became data, every rumor feedback, every compliment a mirror reflecting not who you are, but who they think you should be. You stopped resisting the noise and started studying it. That was the pivot. The moment you turned observation into information, fame stopped being surveillance and became research. At first, your instincts fought it. The constant commentary felt invasive, like living in a glass house built from other people's opinions. You wanted to retreat, disappear, reclaim anonymity. But then you realized disappearance is another form of dependence. Hiding still means you're reacting to them. So you stayed visible, but you changed the script. You started using the spotlight not as illumination, but as heat, burning away everything false. That's when your mind began to evolve. Clarity sharpened into discipline. You started moving with deliberate slowness, the kind that confuses a culture addicted to speed. Each step was chosen, each word filtered. You began to sense the difference between authentic momentum and manufactured urgency. You stopped performing progress and started embodying it. The more they watched, the calmer you became. The contrast unnerved them. They expected fame to inflate you. Instead, it refined you. Emotionally, you entered new territory. Praise stopped thrilling you. Criticism stopped piercing you. Both began to sound like static in different tones. You realized approval and disapproval were just opposite sides of the same dependency coin. You flipped it once and let it land wherever it wanted. Your peace came from detachment, not distance. You still engage, but you no longer absorb. You listen without internalizing, respond without reacting. That neutrality reads as power because most people confuse control with repression. What you've built isn't armor, it's equilibrium. Spiritually, the shift was quieter, but deeper. You began to understand that being seen isn't the same as being known. Visibility exposes the body. Awareness reveals the soul. You stopped trying to manage perception and started nurturing presence. Meditation replaced argument. Reflection replaced retaliation. You discovered that true privacy isn't the absence of eyes, it's the absence of performative intent. When every move could be misinterpreted, you learned to move only from alignment. That's the real evolution, the transition from external validation to internal verification. This calm didn't arrive instantly. It came through small rituals, waking before sunrise, grounding before interaction, writing instead of posting. You trained your nervous system to stay steady under exposure. When attention surged, you breathed slower. When energy spiked, you spoke softer. Paradoxically, the more they demanded performance, the less you gave. That restraint became magnetic. The crowd couldn't understand how absence could feel so present. But that's the secret of modern power. It whispers while everything else screams. You also began to observe the watchers themselves. You saw patterns in their reactions. The jealous ones flared first, loud and brief like fireworks. The inspired ones burned slower, steadier, turning observation into motivation. The toxic ones kept circling, unable to decide whether to attack or admire. You stopped categorizing them as enemies or fans. They were all mirrors, reflecting fragments of human hunger. That realization birthed compassion, the kind that doesn't excuse but understands. It's hard to envy someone when you grasp their pain. So you forgave them quietly, not for their sake, but for your bandwidth. Resentment is expensive, and you're budgeting energy now. That budgeting extended to conversation, too. You speak less. Every word now carries intentional weight. You notice that silence creates curiosity, and curiosity multiplies influence. People lean in when you withhold. You don't manipulate it, you respect it. Your restraint teaches more than your explanations ever could. This is how your influence matured, from visibility to velocity, from reaction to resonance. You're not shouting over noise anymore, you're shaping it. Still, there are nights when the magnitude of it all hums too loud to ignore. The millions of invisible glances, the endless speculation. You stand by the window, city lights reflecting off glass, and feel the hum run through your bones. It no longer feels invasive. It feels like participation. The collective gaze no longer drains you because you've stopped trying to own it. You treat it like weather, observe, adapt, move through. Attention can't corrupt what it can't possess. Your body changed too, in ways science could explain but not predict. Posture straightened, breathing deepened, eyes steadier. The biochemical rhythm of confidence rewired your hormones. That's why people say you glow. It's not mysticism, it's biology, aligning with belief. The watchers think it's luck, makeup, money. It's coherence. The same chemical balance that once reacted to stress now harmonizes with purpose. You've become evidence of what stability looks like under spotlight pressure. And yet the deeper you evolve, the more surreal the contrast becomes. You step into crowded rooms filled with chatter about you, and somehow you feel more invisible than ever. Not erased, expanded beyond their comprehension. They can describe your actions, but not your awareness. That's the real separation. They know the narrative. You live the nuance. You've transcended explanation. Your emotions evolved from response to rhythm. You no longer chase highs or fight lows. You let them circulate like seasons. Joy isn't adrenaline anymore. It's balance. Sadness isn't collapse. It's recalibration. When you stopped dramatizing fluctuation, life started flowing through you instead of at you. That serenity reads as mystery to others, but you know it's just maturity, wearing peace like perfume. What they call detachment is really devotion to growth, to clarity, to integrity. Fame turned into a dojo for your mind, a constant test of ego discipline. Each compliment became a weight to lift, each insult a stretch to breathe through. You used both to build endurance. Now your composure is no act, it's conditioning. They think you were born poised. You were forged poised. You've begun to see yourself not as performer, but as pattern. Wherever you go, energy organizes differently. Meetings stabilize, conflicts diffuse, decisions clarify. It isn't charisma, it's coherence, the silent authority that comes from alignment. Even your mistakes land softer now because your intent stays clean. That integrity radiates louder than apology ever could. With time, you realize that fame is less about eyes and more about energy. Every person watching you is unconsciously feeding into a shared current, and you choose whether to let it lift or drown you. The untrained drown. You learn to surf. You treat attention like electricity, grounded, directed, transformed. Every rumor becomes voltage for your next creation. Every compliment becomes calibration. You've turned observation into power. That shift changed your relationship with fear. You used to flinch at judgment, imagining thousands of unseen critics dissecting your every move. But judgment lost its teeth once you understood it as fascination, filtered through insecurity. People judge what they don't understand, and your growth moved too fast for comprehension. You stopped slowing down for their comfort. The anxiety that once kept you awake became excitement, the adrenaline of expansion. You discovered that fear is just energy asking for a job. Once you gave it purpose, it started working for you. The mental discipline became spiritual practice. Every time you felt yourself tempted to react, you paused, breathed, and asked a single question. Is this worth my frequency? That one pause saved you countless unnecessary wars. It's how you learned to let people misunderstand you without correction. Every explanation wastes power. Every silence compounds it. You've become fluent in restraint, That fluency is misread as arrogance, but you know better. Stillness is the final stage of mastery. It's ironic. While they obsess over your next move, you're focused on subtraction. You're stripping layers, simplifying your environment, minimizing noise. You no longer need grandeur to feel great. Minimalism has become your new luxury. The fewer distractions, the clearer your intuition speaks. And that voice has guided you better than any applause ever could. It tells you when to pivot, when to rest, when to disappear for recalibration. You follow it instinctively now. Fame taught you visibility. Wisdom taught you invisibility. You can be seen everywhere but reached by almost no one. That paradox is your protection. You've also learned that empathy doesn't mean accessibility. You can care for humanity without catering to it. You stopped rescuing people from lessons they refused to learn. Letting them struggle isn't cruelty, it's respect for their evolution. You no longer micromanage outcomes. You simply set examples. That's the quiet revolution you lead, healing by demonstration. Every time you choose peace over reaction, someone else learns what peace looks like. Every time you choose patience over spectacle, another person redefines strength. You don't preach growth, you broadcast it. Emotionally, your focus has migrated inward. You measure success not by applause, but by alignment. You ask, did I stay true today? Not did they like it. You track fulfillment instead of followers. That mental migration is what separates fame from influence. Fame is recognition, influence is resonance. Recognition ends when attention shifts, but resonance lingers, echoing in hearts long after trends die. You're building resonance now. That's why people can't shake you from their thoughts. You don't just occupy screens, you inhabit memory. Spiritually, your detachment deepened into communion. You stopped seeking external confirmation because you finally trust your internal calibration. You feel guided even when logic falters. Every delay, every detour, every quiet season makes sense in retrospect. You used to pray for clarity. Now you move as clarity. It's no longer about asking for signs. It's about being one. That realization changed your entire frequency. You're no longer asking the universe for opportunities. It's asking you for participation. This level of serenity unsettles people. They mistake it for coldness because they've only known confidence as noise. But your silence hums with certainty. It's not withdrawal, it's dominion. You're not hiding. You're reigning quietly, ruling your inner world so completely that the outer one adjusts automatically. The watchers sense it even if they can't articulate it. They feel the authority in your calm. That's why they project so violently. Your peace highlights their chaos. They call you detached because they can't imagine peace without permission. There's also a new clarity about love. Attention used to masquerade as affection and validation as intimacy. You learn to separate them. True connection feels spacious, not suffocating. It doesn't demand to be seen. It wants to understand. You stopped entertaining relationships that exist only to orbit your light. Those connections dim the longer they linger. Now you attract equals, people who don't need your spotlight to shine. Mutual illumination, not dependency. That's the new currency of your emotional economy. This self-awareness seeps into your creative expression, too. What you produce now carries intention layered beneath style. Your work isn't just content, it's signal. Everything you build carries fragments of your evolution encoded within it. That's why it resonates so deeply. People consume it, thinking they're admiring you. But what they're actually feeling is recognition of themselves before fear took over. You're not inspiring them, you're reactivating them. That's the real art awakening, not impressing. The deeper you travel into self-mastery, the more the world rearranges in your favor. You don't chase alignment. It arrives uninvited. Opportunities feel pre-selected, tailor-made. Doors open without knocking, not because of luck, but because energy recognizes readiness. And that readiness radiates from you now like frequency through glass. You don't negotiate with destiny anymore, you collaborate. That cooperation looks effortless to outsiders because they can't see the discipline behind it. They call it ease. You know it's evolution. You also learned the cost of expansion, isolation. The higher you rise, the thinner the air. But instead of fearing solitude, you started using it as laboratory time. Solitude isn't emptiness, it's maintenance. You use those quiet hours to refine thought, declutter intention, audit emotion. The more you do, the clearer your signal becomes. That's why your presence feels amplified even when you say nothing. You're transmitting clarity through posture, through stillness, through simple existence. There are moments when the weight of being seen presses against you again. That's when you return to ritual. You remember that every eye on you is temporary, but your awareness of self is eternal. You ground back into that truth and move forward. You no longer chase the light or run from it. You harness it. Fame used to feel like exposure. Now it feels like illumination. You're not caught in it. You're directing it. That's what adaptation looks like. You turned visibility into mastery. And slowly, without realizing it, you became the calm center of every room. The same people who used to analyze you now adjust themselves when you arrive. The atmosphere bends toward order. You don't demand respect. The environment offers it. That's the unseen reward of self-regulation. Control yourself long enough, and reality starts mirroring your discipline. So when they keep watching, let them. They need to. You're the case study in becoming. The example their own potential uses to remind them what's possible. Their curiosity sustains your legend, but your growth sustains your peace. They can't decide whether to worship or dismantle you. And that confusion is your invisibility cloak. They'll exhaust themselves trying to decode what you've already transcended. The cameras, the whispers, the endless commentary, they're all background noise now. You've turned the volume down on the world and the clarity up on yourself. Every step forward writes another chapter in the manual of endurance. You're not adapting to fame, you're redefining it. Fame isn't the audience watching you. It's the awareness that the only audience that matters is your higher self, observing everything calmly. And as you stand there, lights flickering across glass towers, you realize something profound. This isn't about being admired. It's about being aligned. They think you're famous for what you've done. You know you're recognized for what you've become. The difference is evolution, and evolution doesn't need applause. It only needs truth. That's when the shift happens. The fame that once felt like spotlight begins to feel like sunrise. Inevitable, warm, untouchable. You've stopped running from attention because you understand it now. Attention was never about them seeing you. It was about you seeing yourself through clearer eyes. Their fascination simply illuminated what was already glowing. The irony is, the more they watched, the less you performed. You became an authentic broadcast in a world addicted to filters, and authenticity is the rarest spectacle left. They whisper that you've changed, and they're right. You're no longer powered by needing to be seen. You're powered by purpose. Every step you take now is calibrated, not for reaction, but for resonance. You walk through the same streets that once ignored you, and the air itself reacts differently. Doors open smoother, conversations pause mid-sentence. Even traffic seems to part unconsciously. That's not coincidence. That's the physics of presence. The universe rearranges itself around someone who knows who they are. They're still talking, of course. Screens light up with your name, threads dissect your choices, and yet none of it reaches you. You've become the quiet eye in their storm of speculation. Let them analyze. Let them invent theories. Their obsession only feeds the myth they're trying to dismantle. The truth is simpler. You didn't chase relevance. Relevance chased alignment and found you. They keep trying to map your trajectory using logic, unaware that logic doesn't chart conviction. You're not in competition with them. You're in conversation with destiny. Emotionally, you've reached a point beyond comparison. You don't envy anyone, and that confuses people who built their lives around envy. You move without rivalry, without resentment. That serenity looks like arrogance to those still surviving off validation. They mistake peace for ego, because they've never met confidence that doesn't shout. You don't need to convince them otherwise. You learned long ago that truth doesn't debate. It demonstrates. And they feel that demonstration every time you appear. Your energy lingers in rooms long after you've left. It's in the lowered voices, the softened tones, the silence that follows your name. You've become their benchmark. Even your absence is influential. That's the strange power of mastery. It teaches through contrast. You remind them what focus looks like, what dignity feels like, what self-respect sounds like in a world that barters it for attention. They thought your rise would end at admiration. They didn't expect transcendence. But fame built on substance doesn't fade. It evolves. You're not just visible, you're catalytic. Every watcher is shifting because of you. Some rise in inspiration, others spiral in envy, but all are forced to confront themselves. That's what real influence does. It doesn't entertain, it awakens. And awakening, though beautiful, drives the unready mad. You stand at the edge of this era, calm amid chaos, knowing this isn't your 15 minutes. It's your transformation echoing through theirs. You no longer fear being misunderstood. Misunderstanding has become your camouflage. They can't attack what they can't define. The louder they talk, the clearer your path becomes. Their disbelief is the soundtrack of your becoming. So you keep walking. Not faster, not louder, just truer. Let the city hum, let the eyes follow, let the minds race. You've earned the right to exist without explanation. They can't believe how far you came because they never believed it was possible. That disbelief is your crown now, forged from every doubt you outlived. And as they continue watching, some in awe, some in anger, you give them one final lesson. This was never about fame. This was about freedom. You didn't rise to be admired. You rose to show what liberation looks like when it walks through a crowd, pretending not to stare.